Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Backlot. We are the Backlot Boys. This is episode 10, Life After Star Wars Land. What's to come outside of Galaxy's Edge? What do you think's to come after that? I can't wait to talk about this.
I mean, right now it's kind of hard to imagine. Everything is so heavy on the Star Wars side, of whether it's stuff that's actually there, things that are supposed to be coming, at the end of the year, some hotel changes over the next, year or two. It's really hard to imagine, what are they going to do now? There's no focus on anything else. Haunted Mansion's having an anniversary. Soarin's back for a little while, the California version, but nobody's talking about anything else. So it's hard for me to imagine. I know we're both excited about it, but it's I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say and your ideas as far as where they're going to put their focus.
Yeah, it's an interesting topic because this Galaxy's Edge land that was created around Star Wars is so different from the rest of the park, from Fantasyland to Frontierland to Toontown, the way the cast members interact, the way the merchandise is sold, the attractions that still haven't even opened, but will that have any influence on the rest of the park? I think it's going to be a great topic, but before we do that, let's jump into the Kingdom Cable.
Breaking news. Hey, there's a lot of stuff going on in the news. If you have Google alerts and you're checking out everything that's going on with Disneyland right now, it's all Galaxy's Edge all the time. However, there are some other things going on, stuff at the parks, kind of the surrounding area around the parks, generally having to do with what kind of strollers, what kind of wagons, all that kind of stuff. What are you allowed to bring into the park? They're making some changes, whether it has to do with food or child transportation or just transportation of food. Scar, do you have any extra information on that? I just I remembered it a few weeks ago when we were gonna run this topic before, but we've passed that. So I have a feeling it's probably a little more fresh for you.
As with the Westward Ho wagons back in Frontierland in 1955, so are now the stroller wagons. So those are now banned from the park.
That's like a radio flyer. It's like those big plastic ones. There's like 9 kids in it, kind of like a limousine of the wagons. Is that the one I'm thinking of?
Yeah, and you got all sorts of other junk you bringing in there. It's outrageous. So yeah, okay. No wagons. They're done. Strollers can be within 31 to 52 inches. So that's new constraints at the entrances to the security. So you know how at Disneyland, you don't go through security in Esplanade anymore. You go through security at the Mickey and Friends parking structure or over the Harbor Boulevard, which is going to change very soon, and then over at the hotels. So it's changed. So in those areas, there's little spots where they measure the not wheelchairs. I keep saying that. Strollers. Also, very interesting. You are not allowed to bring your loose ice.
Loose ice. So what are people doing with the ice? Wasn't there something about dry ice? I thought there was dry ice. They're like, absolutely not with this stuff. You're throwing it at each other and getting, minor burns. But I didn't know about the loose ice. What were people doing with it? It's just on the ground. It's a hazard. People are slipping on it like the old banana peel thing.
The only thing that I can figure out is people like, all done and throw it down on the ground and have people trip and slide. And, that's liability for Disney. The other thing, too, was it was dangerous at water parks, I guess, where people would bring a cooler and they just dump it on the ground when they were done because, I don't know, they're born in a barn.
Sure.
So that's for loose ice, and then dry ice is also banned. Nobody quite remembers this from a lot of things that I've heard when they're wondering why dry ice is gone. Back a few years ago, there was actually a guy who thought he was a jokester, and he put a bunch of dry ice in a box and pretended it was a bomb in Toontown. So no more dry ice. So check that one off now, too. So no loose, no dry. And then smoking. No smoking in Disneyland, California Adventure, or any domestic Disney theme park. So those are gone. Also for downtown Disney in California, gone, too. So the only places to do that is outside of security. So you have to go outside of security because the Esplanade is also now no smoking. So no smoking sections in the park. You got to go out to do that. So
what are we talking about? Like the blacktop out there in the parking lot? Because if if security happens at the Mickey and Friends lot, you got to either do it in your car or do it in the parking lot or something like that. Because where else unless somebody's being sneaky, they're hiding behind the Rainforest Cafe, which I don't know, but I can't imagine that there's too many places to to duck out and take care of that. And that does that apply to I think that applies to e-cigarettes, vaping, like the Juuls, whatever, all that
Yeah,
weird stuff. It's
everything.
everything is kind of wrapped up in there, I think.
Everything's wrapped up. Yeah, so I
Sure.
guess maybe the only places potentially is making friends. I don't know if that's specifically banned, but probably the best bet is Harbor. So maybe center line of the road of Harbor. I don't know, but I think it's a long time coming. It's
Sure.
something that will make people with respiratory issues happy. So
Yeah,
that's
yeah, I think
something that
so.
happened to the parks that's been wiped. That's been wiped out. A lot of new regulations. But what
Hmm.
else is going on in the news?
Yeah, and I mean, we're not here to chime in like with our own personal opinions necessarily on how we feel about those particular things. We're just kind of giving you guys the news. So that'd be up to you. You guys go in the comments or something and say how you feel about that. I'd be interested to know because there's some curious arguments on both sides. Especially I'm thinking more on the smoking ban. I'm not a smoking guy myself, but I recognize that it's quite a big inconvenience to leave the park, walk all the way out there. People are going to say, I got a problem, and they'll definitely have a voice like that. But it's just
Definitely a
it's
grills
tricky.
thing to do.
It's tricky, and yeah. So I'd definitely be interested to hear what people have to say. But jumping away from that here for a second, the problem is again, Galaxy's Edge is just taking over everything in terms of news. Whether and it's not even like I don't even you can't even really call it news because it's like up to the minute. There's just constant stuff coming out about Galaxy's Edge. Most of it's reviews, people's opinions. The peanut gallery, but Soarin' is coming back just for the month of June, I think, the 1st through the 30th. So soaring over California, little nostalgia there. People, I don't know. Do you think the orange thing is on? People can still smell the oranges, or was that disabled and they got rid of all those fragrances?
If it's gone, I riot. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, that's critical. That was a
Yeah,
huge
it's
part.
important. It's important.
Hmm. Hmm.
I do want to mention one thing. If you were concerned about bringing medication into the park using your ice solutions there, you can bring dried, or not dried, but the little like freezy packets. And there was also a rumor that you could bring loose ice as long as it was like tied in a Ziploc bag, but I wouldn't risk that. Second thing is
Yeah.
you can bring medicine and have it cooled or put into a refrigerator at First Aid. And First Aid is down Main Street and to the right next to the Crystal Plaza, I think it's called. Or
Oh,
Plaza Inn?
okay.
Plaza Inn. It's over there. So you can have your medicines put in a refrigerator and you can go and take them when you need it. So no problem with loose ice anywhere. You can just pop in there, leave it off, and then go about your Disneyland adventure.
Good deal. Yeah, thanks for mentioning that. There are a lot of people that use medications that need to be refrigerated at a
Mm-hmm.
certain level, and so in an event like that, you just say something like ADA, and they have to kind of comply with it, right? There's no like accompanying paperwork with that kind of thing. It's just
I don't even
you
think
throw
that
the
falls under the ADA. That's just Disney being a good guy.
sure. Good deal. Okay. All right. So that's that. The Lamplight Lounge. How is that thing doing? Have you heard about the Lamplight Lounge? Have people been pretty happy with it? Lamplighter, they're going in, they're enjoying it. There's long lines, or is it just kind of just kind of average?
I think when it first opened, it was real popular. People complained
Sure,
about the
as it is.
prices, but other than that, I think it's just done fairly well. Like I haven't heard really anything too much either way. I think people like it for the people who like that style of food, drink, and stuff along those lines. But yeah, I haven't heard any real negative or positive things. It's just been kind of there's a restaurant. Like I haven't heard
Yeah.
anything honestly.
Okay. All right. Well, so they're that's interesting, especially what you mentioned about people talking about the price. I mean, when we first talked about the changes to Paradise Pier over there and what was going to be happening, and um, yeah, there was a very heavy emphasis on how ornate the theming and all that kind of stuff of the Lamplight Lounge was going to be. But they recently added a weekend brunch option, which I was scoping it out. And you think about brunch, you're always thinking about pancakes and like all that kind of breakfast orange juice flowing and coming out of fountains and filling up all these funny little champagne glasses and stuff. But I was looking at the menu. It's not it's not pancakey enough
Hmm.
to me. You know what I mean? Like so, but they do have there's avocado toast, $29. You get it there only. So yeah. So anyway, they're adding that brunch on there. It's not expensive relative to the restaurant. It's right in line with their other prices. But anyway, there's a weekend brunch. But if you're expecting this huge spread of breakfast style food, it's not necessarily that. It's just I think extended hours and maybe the lights are lower or brighter. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know much about brunch. Um, Additionally, well, would you go to that? Would you get the avocado toast? A couple little
No,
nibbles?
Nah.
No, okay, he's not interested. So other things, these are again these small stuff. Tale of the Lion King is taking place right now at the Palisades stage.
Ah, I saw
Seems to
that.
be generating quite a crowd. I don't know how long is that show? Do you think how long is that running?
How long it's gonna go for, or how long the show
Oh,
is?
let's say both. So duration of the show,
Aren't
end
those
to
shows
end. What do we
usually
got? Like
like
about
20, 15 minutes at best? Maybe a little
yeah,
shorter?
with the attention spans and everything. So okay, so we're thinking it's probably no more than a half an hour. But do you know? So the stint. So this is going to last the rest of the summer or into the fall.
Probably
Maybe.
it's what's in anticipation of the Lion King live action, so it'll probably last maybe another month or two when the movie comes in. The movie is
Okay.
in theaters. It'll probably end around the time it goes out of theaters. It looks cool. Lots of cool costumes and stuff.
Yeah, good singing. I was listening to some clips. Not to get off the track of parks here, but talking about live action. What are you most excited for? You're most excited for Aladdin or for The Lion King?
That's a hard one. I really like Aladdin,
Mm-hmm.
but man. Well, here's the thing. I've never seen a live action animated movie ever, so
Well, you've seen Roger Rabbit.
yeah, but
Would
not
you
this
count
new
that?
series of ones that have come out in the recent years. I've never seen
Okay.
one of them, so I don't know.
Okay.
Man, I kind of want to see what the deal is with the genie. With
Yeah, you can't dog on Will, man. You can't put him down.
yeah,
Like
I
he's
kind of
giving
want to
it his best
see it.
shot.
I want to
I
see
think it'll
it.
be good. I think it'll
Yeah,
be good. I
I'm
got
gonna
high
go. I'm gonna
hopes.
go with Lion King or
There he is.
Aladdin, but I don't know. Just because I'm curious to see how that went, and I love the genie, such a good character.
Absolutely. Also in line with that, let's ask one more opinion question over here to you. Music wise, those two movies, and you can pluck little other songs from other movies, Beauty and the Beast, Little Mermaid, whatever. But those two movies, in terms of soundtrack, really nail it for me. Are you a soundtrack wise, so music wise, are you more of the Aladdin soundtrack, or are you more about that Lion King soundtrack, that good Elton John pumping through?
Um, I would say probably Lion King, just because I remember that the most when I was a kid.
Sure. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
motivational
yeah,
soundtrack on that
yeah.
one. Aladdin a little bit more upbeat, kind of funny, a little joking
Mm-hmm.
around. Very good, very good. But okay, all right. So that's the tale of Lion King that's going on at the Palisades stage, and we're making the assumption that it's running through the length that thing is in the theaters,
Yeah,
the movie.
guesses.
So lastly, and this is like, oh man, I feel like these are so cheap. The last one is Ray-Ban. Disney actually did this a while ago. They partnered with Ray-Ban. The pattern on the sunglasses was a little different. I think it was just red, white, and black. It was just Mickey, and it was kind of this the side view, the side profile of the tricircle head going, this little
Mm-hmm.
smile
Yeah, I
action.
saw that. They were cool.
There's a few more colors that have been put in here, and it's mostly on the arms of the glasses. It's not quite as much on the the eye area. I don't know. I don't know the do you know the sections of sunglasses? What are you supposed to call everything? So you got the front, and then you've got the little arms that go on the sides. I don't know what if you separate those, like if they have separate names or
There's a
goofy
bridge
names or
somewhere
whatever.
involved. I know there's a bridge.
Bridge. Well, we know
Yeah.
about the nose. We're assuming that okay, we'll call that the bridge. It's kind of a more flat top version of the Wayfarer. Some might argue that it's exactly the same, but I put mine next to these. They're not the same. They actually had a pair at the airport. Ray-Ban and Disney, they come together. They put together these dope Wayfarers. They're out there for you. You'll check them out when next time you're in the park. Or down. Or these ones are only downtown Disney, I think, right? I don't think the parks generally carry those.
Yeah, I bet it's
Could be.
only in downtown Disney or Disney Springs and Disney World.
Yeah, the Sunglass Hut or whatever that place is. So
Yeah.
you'll have the option for that. But dude, I hate to say it. That's it. That's all I have for news. All right. So now that we have the news and all that good stuff out of the way, we already said at the beginning of the episode we're not going to talk about Star Wars Land or Galaxy's Wedge or whatever the thing is. We're not going to talk about that today. We'll get to all those points in another time. Maybe we won't. We keep pushing it off. But what we're actually really going to get into here is what is going to happen to the park now. And some of that is going to be residual because of Star Wars Land, because of Galaxy's Wedge over there. So, Scar, like, what do you think? The first thing first, we've got all these crowds that are pumping in there. People are making reservations to get in. Maybe they're not doing that anymore now that we're into June. But there's all these crowds, this huge influx or supposed influx that's coming into the park. Allegedly, there's a bunch more people in the parks now. What are they going to do about this? How are they going to handle these crowds?
Well, that's a good point because a very strange thing has occurred around Disneyland, and that is Galaxy's Edge is packed, but the rest of the park's wait times are like unseasonably low wait times right now. And the reason is people got kind of freaked out. They were told that the park was going to be so crowded. Also, they weren't going to get an opportunity to go into Galaxy's Edge because as of right now, it's still under reservation only, and those reservations are all gone. So if you went to Disneyland now and you cared nothing about Star Wars Land, you would have a great time in the park right now. But June 24th or something along those lines, when the reservation system ends and it is a free-for-all, that is when things are going to get interesting in the parks for crowds for sure. Do you know what happens when the reservation system ends in Galaxy's Edge?
I was just going to ask that. There's a meltdown or something, I guess. I'm not really sure, but from what I've read, what I can see, they're still going to do like the gating, like they're still going to, a certain number of people go in, then they're kind of like clicking one of those little things and how many people come out. I'm sure it won't be that manual, but isn't it something like that?
As far as I can find, and this is me doing a little bit of looking, is that they're going to create something called boarding groups. And you would use your phone with the Disneyland app, and the Disneyland app
Gotta get that app, right? You gotta get that app. Everything that I've seen, and again, like I told you, I've been trying to avoid stuff, so I get excited and surprised when I go in there. But it seems like without that app, man, you're missing half the experience.
Yeah, I guess it has like the data pad thing that we could talk about eventually, but you would have your boarding group, and once your time slot has appeared, you would then go towards one of the entrances. So that's Critter Country, Fantasy, or Frontierland entrance. And you would go into the land. And I'm not sure if there's an actual time that, hey, it's 4 hours. You got to get out like it is currently with the wristband reservation system. So I think those are things we'll learn more as time goes on. But yeah, once you go into the park, it's not like you can just wander into Galaxy's Edge. You would have to use the app and then put you and your party's tickets into, and then you would get a boarding group, and then you could go in when they tell you can.
How does that work for annual passes? How does that no? So we didn't talk about it again. This was something that we were going to bring up on the news last time. Is that there have been some changes to the annual package, annual passport packages, different tiers, things like that. We're not going to bother with all that stuff. You guys look it up online. You can check it out. But how does the Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, Galaxy's Wedge, I always, how does this process, the ticketing or boarding group through the app, how does that work with the passports? Is there limitations?
I don't think so. As long as you're in the park and you scan your ticket, you can go in. If they really wanted to get crazy and limit crowds, they could limit the amount of times an annual passporter could enter the land using those boarding group system. I mean,
maybe like a weekly thing, a little weekly limit. Hey, you get your fourth time in here, kick the can on down to Toontown, like that. I don't know, maybe something like that though, just
rising spires, but you got to get lost. But so that's a thing. Crowd-wise, for people, especially annual passporters entering the park, they have constructed the massive new Toy Story land or Toy Story parking structure. So that can accommodate like 6,000 something vehicles. They've redone the tram route. It should be opening fairly soon. They also are just now working on a new pedestrian bridge coming from that parking garage over the Downtown Disney self-parking and then into Downtown Disney. So there's this new little elevated bridge that goes through there. So that's something to deal with the crowds. But I think we've talked about this briefly before to manage additional crowding issues, and that is Project Stardust, not the Death Star, but the redoing of the walkways in Disneyland. And there's some really good things they did, and there's some things that really, really, really didn't look so good. But overall, the whole thing, I think they did a good job. But there is a glaring thing that I have to bring up, and I have to do it right now. I
have a feeling it's got something to do with planters. It's got something to do with trees, something about foliage. I know how you are about all that stuff. But it could be something else. Go ahead and just let's hear it. You got to get it off your chest. You got to vent. This is the place for it.
Adventureland sign.
Ah.
So what they did was they took out a huge chunk of a planter in some of the water area, and they expanded the entrance from Adventureland to Frontierland. That was that little back alley between the two lands. And they expanded that and made it much wider. So it's good. It's a cleaner way back and forth between that area. But the resulting thing was that they decreased the size of the sign and they took away a lot of the elements that made it unique. Also, you can see a lot of Frontierland from Adventureland, which is unfortunate. It looks like 1955 again. And some trees disappeared. And yeah, they took down the big arched thatched roof that used to go over the Adventureland sign. That little kind of gazebo thing down there that the Indiana Jones line used to go through back in 1995. I get that they took that away, but they didn't add any new elements. Like if you're going to remove that, you're just removing elements that made the sign unique. Now it feels lacking. It feels like it's missing elements, and it's kind of disappointing.
Yeah, that was that little awning thing. It didn't have like a thatched roof. You could actually walk, but there was no bench. There wasn't like a seating opportunity in there, as
No.
far as I know.
Mm-mm.
Okay.
And it's
Yeah.
okay if they wanted to remove that. They wanted to remove it. It was always something I loved looking at, thinking like, man, back in when Indiana Jones opened, the line used to stretch all the way to here. But
What do you think? What do you think, though? What was the intended purpose of that?
it
Why
was just
was
a
that there?
decoration. Some people
Okay,
said
there
it
you
was for the line itself, but that's incorrect. It's been there for a long, long time, and then the line just went through it, and I always remember that. But yeah, that's
You know
gone.
what I did? You know what I did with that area is it'd be one of those. It was kind of like a limbo position. So it's say you're coming out of Adventureland, you're trying to decide you're going back to the hotel, take a nap, and you'd kind of pit stop right there. Basically, like that was the pit stop. You'd sit there and you would kind of gaze over at the tiki room, and you think, hey, if I just go into the tiki room, I cool off, I have a Dole Whip, I regain my wits and my strength, and then I can stay at the park. I don't even have to go back for a nap. That was the area where the decision was made. If you're there and you're just feeling like you're just feeling dilapidated, you got to go back to the hotel. But that was like the point of no return. I mean, if you're there, you decide to stick it out, you're gonna have a good attitude. You go into the tiki room and you recharge your batteries. Otherwise, you head on back to the hotel. That to me, that's what that was. It was like, okay, I'm gonna back over here. I'm gonna do some thinking, just soul searching, and then decide what to do from there.
Interesting. That is the reason why
Yeah.
they got rid of it, is people would just congregate under it.
Oh, geez. Okay. Well, so blame me for that part. But now, then why did they take away that awesome sign that was up there? Yeah, the Tiki God with like some tusk-looking horn things. There's some fire involved at times. Like, why
They
why would they
rem-
get rid of that?
they put the tusk back on, thankfully.
Okay. Okay.
But after that, like even the text for the lettering is smaller, so there's a lot of like dead space in the design. So there's the archway, and then there's like just a lot of like dead space. Like the text is really small. Like I don't know, I just so it's just something about that's just off, and it's disappointing. But other stuff that they did on more of a positive note, the castle, a bit of a stir when they took down the scaffolding around the castle. The spires are brand new, completely rebuilt, laser scanned, so they were like replicas of the original, and they are very, very blue. But I'm warming up to it. I'm liking
Okay.
it. I'm liking it. So have you seen pictures of the castle, the new color scheme?
No, I have. I mean, I have. Yeah, I've kind of checked it out. For me, it's been tough. Maybe I haven't looked at it on the right monitors. Maybe I've looked at it on my phone while I'm outside in the sun. They didn't seem that dramatic, or it didn't seem high contrast to me. But maybe I might not have been looking at the right photos.
It's a dramatic change. There's a lot of side by side images, and when you see the side by side images, regardless if you don't like the paint, what they did was massive. Like the castle was in poor shape leading up to this renovation. So yeah, maybe some people aren't 100% pleased with the color, but it looks amazing. All the little problems with the castle that's been, accumulating over time have all been fixed. The weird dented spire, when they put the caps on them with the snow every Christmas,
Yeah,
one time one
yeah.
swung and dented the side of one. The dent's
Oh.
gone. I always saw it.
Hey, what about this? Remember those they're like have I don't know if they have these don't have the family crest. These are these banners that come down from those light posts, right? That are in those little cutouts along the bridge leading up to the castle.
Yeah.
I think there's like a dragon. There's something is like embroidered on those, right? Those things are super faded. Did they replace those? They have something in there now. Maybe they went away from the dragon.
I
Put
don't
like an
know.
octopus on there or something. I don't know, but
We're gonna have to look.
that seems like something that, I mean, it's like a no-brainer you're going to replace, and kind of you're going to button up right there too, because if you're dressing the castle in this whole thing, but then you have these faded banners or whatever. There's definitely an appropriate name for those, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, I'm sure that got changed out. It looks so good. They also replanted a little pine tree that I didn't know about, but has a really cool backstory. You know, the Imagineer Herbert Ryman, he designed the original artwork for Disneyland, the Cell
Are
to
you
the
talking
Bankers.
about the pine tree that's like on the left side?
Yeah.
It's kind of tucked. It's by that where the rock kind of gradually turns into the side of the castle there.
Yeah.
Okay, I always thought that was like I thought that was more of like a bonsai tree. What's the story behind that thing?
As far as I could tell, I forgot the name of it. It was something like a dwarf something kind of the species of the tree, but I forgot exactly what it's called. But the story is that Herbert Ryman, the designer of the castle and all, and he was diagnosed with cancer. And he was sad that he wouldn't make
I
it
hate to hear
till
it.
Christmas, and an Imagineer brought over to his house a little like pine tree that he put by his bed. It was like a little Christmas tree. He turned out he did live until January, and when he passed away, they took that little pine tree and they planted it at Disneyland. But eventually, I guess it had grown up a couple times, and they cut it down. It's just like, come on, guys. You could have moved it, maybe. Anyway, it had been swapped out a couple times, but now they have like an official like tree with a plaque and a whole thing. So it's just a nice little tribute.
So how do you read the plaque? Because isn't that positioned kind of a little bit outside of the area where people are supposed to be going?
It's on the water's edge. So when you look towards the castle, it is like directly below you under the fence.
Oh, okay. Okay, gotcha. Yeah, so that is in the area that I thought. All right, okay.
Yeah, Herbert Ryman, if you want to look into this esteemed gentleman, he had a crazy life of just adventures, like traveling through East Asia during like 1920s and then living with a circus.
Was he the one that Walt basically that guy had the best job in the entire world. Was he the one that Walt had go out there and find like artifacts for rides and like study like what the Mekong Delta was like when they were working on the Jungle Cruise? Maybe I'm thinking of somebody else.
It might have been, but that could have been Herbert Golf too.
So many herbs back then. Yeah, that was a very common name.
Yeah, but he is a treasure. His artwork's hands down probably the best artwork ever to come out of Imagineering. And
what's your favorite Ryman painting?
Probably his Epcots. His Epcot paintings are just, man,
dude.
It's
I don't know
level.
why this is too much. Nobody's going to believe this at home. I was going to say the exact same thing. And now I don't know which Epcot one you're talking about, but he had an Epcot one that was in. I don't remember where this was published. I'm sure you could find it anywhere on the internet, but it was in one of those books that you have, one of these animation books or Imagineering books or what have you. But it had not the Epcot globe that we got, but maybe more, and not the one that we deserved, but a really cool one. And it was super stylized. It almost looked like it had some like kind of like animated qualities to it. And then there's like the clouds, there's like sun coming through, everybody's having a good time. There's like a group of school kids, the monorails in the background.
Sunset orange background.
Yeah, this is the one. We're talking about the same one.
That one and his that archway that is it Japanese or Chinese, that red arch. There's
the pagoda.
A really, really cool painting along with that. So yeah, Herbert Ryman, just absolutely amazing. But yeah, the castle itself. So if you look at it, what's different is that they've taken the bricks that make up the castle. They get lighter as they go up, so that creates a little more forced perspective. And then the spires themselves taper a little bit into a lighter blue, even on the spire itself. So eventually, at the very top, they're considerably lighter than the turrets down at the bottom. And the other change that they made was the largest of the spire in the central of the castle. It's a little bit off in color, so it's a little bit, it's actually a little purple. It's a little more atmosphere put into it, so it just adds like a little extra perspective to the castle to make it look a little bigger. It's the smallest castle, so a couple little changes like that to it. I think it's good. I appreciate all the neat details that they've added to the castle.
All right, fair enough. I hate to do this. I pulled up some pictures. I'm looking at the pictures of the castle right now. This is absurd. The ones that I had seen before obviously were not what I thought they were. I think I was actually just imagining that screen that they had put up so nobody could see it. I think that's all I'd seen. These are incredible. So I'll I'm so hello. Yeah, this is going to be great. I can't wait to see these in person.
And for everyone who is kind of concerned about how dark those spires are, they're gonna fade super quick. That's like to me, they're too saturated. But I know that within a year they're gonna be like 10% less saturated than there were, and it'll like fall into like a perfect ground.
Because this is like, somebody takes a picture of the castle. They go into one of these photo editing apps on their phone. And they either put their finger on the saturation, they mess around with the hue, or they just take contrast and they crank it all the way up. That's pretty much what it looks like right now. But yeah, like you're saying, it'll fade. It'll get a little bit more appropriate here soon. But dude, this is wild. This is wild. I like this a lot.
So
This is
those are
great.
the two big Stardust changes that were made
I did
between.
have one comment. If you don't mind. You had mentioned you didn't say dwarfism, but you were talking about a dwarf tree, a small tree.
Yeah.
Um, but speaking of dwarfism, Grumpy Cat, aka Tartar Sauce. I'm sure you've seen, his name is Tartar Sauce. I'm
Yeah.
sure that you saw this in the news. But what some people probably didn't see is years ago, Grumpy Cat is invited to Disneyland. He parades himself all around. He's walking around on different things. The seven dwarfs are around there. I don't think Pluto got involved. I don't think they didn't want to scare him, but the dwarfs are around and Snow White's around and everything. And he was enjoying himself in his grumpiest ways around the castle. Unfortunately, it just came to mind, but a few weeks ago, he passed along. But I this would be one. I hope there's like one of his whiskers or something is kind of floating around in the water now, because I think Grumpy Cat was one
Oh,
of the
poor
cutest
Grumpy
cats I've
Cat.
ever seen in my whole life there. And so yeah, that reminded me of him. And I'm sure he and Herb are having a good time somewhere. So anyway, carrying on.
Yeah, poor Grumpy Cat. That's sad.
Yeah, yeah, tartar sauce.
So the I'm trying to think of like the other things that we haven't talked about. So we talked about New Orleans Square. They removed a ton of the
Yeah.
planters and the old kind of attempt at making some kind of stadium standing areas for Phantasmic. A lot of those were removed. Dumbo's queue was
You talked about that to the blue in the face.
so Dumbo, Small World, all of those. Some of the changes that they did make over in Tomorrowland was they shrunk a few planters and made a lot more areas for strollers. So those
Okay.
are kind of the last changes they made in this project to widen and make as much area as possible for people to get around in the parks, which is needed. The only thing I ever said that was bad was the Adventureland sign. So that's good for crowds. So I think the crowds are going to do a little bit better with the parking structure and now with these wider paths. But now that Star Wars Land is open, this changes the park forever. The park will never be the same. You have an area in the park where cast members don't acknowledge anything but the land that they're in. And one of the biggest questions I have is you have a land where cast members won't acknowledge the fireworks. They'll be like, oh, there's a battle in the sky, or if somebody asks them for a food or something like that, they say, I don't know what this kind of food is. But then you say you're in Frontierland and a cast member is standing there and you go, hey, can I find a place to charge my iPhone? They're like, yeah, iPhone charging just around the corner. How is that? Are they eventually just going to get rid of that style in Galaxy's Edge? That whole cast member theming, is that going to go away? Or is that going to eventually come into the park? Because I see it as some weird like contrast between the two.
What do you want? I mean, do you want to see like eventually they're going to just dial it back a little bit in terms of what's going on over in Galaxy's Wedge right now? Are they're gonna start like, okay, kind of humdrum, they'll get used to it and it pretty much gets kind of robotic or monotonous after a while, or just kind of mundane? Do you want to see like a balance of the two, or do you want it to be just like super hyped and super themed and have that carry over, and everybody in Frontierland's like that, and you pull out a phone and they grab it from you and throw it in the river and say that it's witchcraft or something? Like, what would you prefer?
I would prefer the hyper themed design.
Sure.
But it also comes back to the thing that I've struggled with recently is that do you say, just for instance, as a cast member, acknowledge that you're in Disneyland and you're in this kind of magical place with all these different themes going around, or do you acknowledge it as I just live in Frontierland and have no idea what's outside of Frontierland?
I kind of like that. I remember, and I brought this up on the podcast before, I've talked about it in forums, but I remember one time I've seen this a couple times, but I remember one time being in the line for Space Mountain. Can't remember if you were there with me. I don't think so. I think it's a little later in the game. I'm in the line. I look down over by the queue, and there is a girl. She is dressed in the Haunted Mansion apparel, and she's just flirting away with one of these Space Mountain guys. And I was just like, hey, flirt all day if you want. I don't care about that. But dude, it looked so weird seeing this like gothic green and green and black kind of candy striped outfit with the frilly things. The what do you call those? It's like a
Poofs.
doily kind
Ah,
of things coming
toilets.
out from everywhere. You that outfit can't be there. That can't be Space
Absolutely not.
Mountain. What are we talking about? That's a space station. Get out of here. Not a protective suit. And so it just that seems so weird to me. And that's not even heavy theming. That's just like what and first of all, Tomorrowland. What theme is that anyway? But it just again, like I said, just it was too much out of place. So I want people to be entrenched. I want them to I want them to do that. I want to get in the whole thing. But we haven't been to Galaxy's Edge. Maybe it's annoying. Maybe after a while, it's like, geez, buddy, I'm trying to find a charger at least. Come on, like. But I don't know. I don't know what that's like.
Yeah, it's something that I've continued to struggle with recently. Is which is better? Is that like hyper theming, or you acknowledge you're in a kingdom of magic and there's all sorts of different things going on? And you also have to operationally run a park. Tony Baxter, the good Tony, mentioned this in a podcast a while back. He was like, "Oh, it's just silly them like taking down signage that's inappropriate for like a theme. Like it might clash with the theme of the land." Like that was foreshadowing Galaxy's Edge, because if you want to get on these rides, there is no signage. It's really interesting. Same with Pandora. They do not have signage up into the attractions. There's like a small little sign that might say a wait time for standby or fast pass, but there's no like giant sign say, take for instance like Finding Nemo Submarine Lagoon. It's got this giant submarine with Finding Nemo written on it, partnered with Pixar. All that stuff is not in these recent lands, and I kind of like it.
Yeah, it's nice. It's nice not to see, all that overlap. Maybe what they do is they have a little bit of a blending of the different themes, like on the borders. Like the borderlands there a little bit between the two parks, or between the different lands. For something like Toontown and Fantasyland, like that's a classic spillover. But where you have like Tomorrowland, mixing up with Main Street, maybe you do something. And again, they try. Sometimes I like to think that rusty kind of color scheme and like meteor type thing that they did with the Tomorrowland there for a little while in the late '90s. That's almost like kind of steampunky, which it actually does go pretty well with like a Victorian or more of a like the Main Street kind of theme going on over there. But I would think let it blend a little bit on those borders, but otherwise, man, like it just needs to be really, really siloed. That's what's fun for me. I don't know. That's just opinions, but.
Yeah, I think so too. Now, with Galaxy's Edge, I think an important thing fairly soon is to have something else to pull those crowds away, because you don't want like 90% of your audience going to one side of the park. So where do they start expanding the park to? The Disneyland is really densely packed. There's basically more attractions in Disneyland and California Adventure than there is in the entirety of Disney World. If you count the attractions out, there's legitimately more attractions in this densely packed space than there are in the entire Disney World. So where would you look towards Disneyland and find if there's an attraction, if there's a piece of land that you would remove? What do you think? Even the viewers out there, like, where would you go?
Yeah.
Where would you go?
I'm
I know where
I'm kind of
go.
interested to hear what the viewers would say. You know, it's tricky. So I mean, they're surrounded by Harbor Boulevard. They've got some major thoroughfares that surround the park. It's not like Disney World, where it's like the boundary is way to the outside of everything, and you can add a whole land. You can add 10 lands. It's like Oprah handing out lands to everybody. It's not like that at Disneyland. They're tight. They're tight for space, and so to me, like the first thing that I think of is like, do they need all those cast buildings in the back? Like right behind Toontown, right behind some of the I guess they'd be some of the show or maintenance buildings, and actually Galaxy's Edge really runs on that edge, right on like right on that one road there that's right before the buildings. But I would think that, yeah, dude, knock out some of those buildings. They could take care of that stuff somewhere else. What do they need to have a credit union on site? Take that, put that somewhere else, and maybe start putting some stuff back there, or start moving it, go underground. I don't know. There's not a lot of space. There's really not a lot of space. I mean, it'd be tricky. I mean, I think maybe do something different on Tom Sawyer's Island. Maybe throw something else out there. But otherwise, and Tomorrowland has a lot of wasted space. Maybe something kind of like that. And think about, dude, I think one of the biggest things is that whole People Mover track, Autopia, subs, that area, and that's a big thing of contention, right? You love
Yeah.
the subs. I love the subs. I love the old subs. I enjoy the new subs. But there comes a time in every park's life. Sometimes you got to get a wrecking ball crane out there, just start swinging it, because there's some stuff out there that is just like, man, what are we doing? This is Tomorrowland, and there's gas powered cars. Are you out of your minds? So I don't know, what do you do? My 2 cents is like, maybe do some work with that backstage area behind Toontown, behind Galaxy's Edge. Otherwise, I think you just start bringing those wrecking balls, start bringing in those bulldozers right into Tomorrowland, right into that kind of that northeast corner of the park.
I want to get controversial, and I'm going to
Here
say
it
that
comes.
that area of the park with the Autopia, the submarines, and the monorail need to be repurposed. I love the submarines and I love the lagoon. That whole area is like such Disney. Like, it's just that's what makes Disney so unique, is those submarines with the Matterhorn and things like that. But
That's a nostalgia heavy area for me. And so that's why it's tough for me to say that, and I said that, and now I'd probably back up a little bit on, being so bold about it or cavalier about knocking that stuff out. But repurpose is definitely a better way to put it. But man, I have such fun memories of wandering around back there when there wasn't necessarily a huge thing, when they didn't feel like they had to pack everything in so tight. Where there was a couple little sections of even the Disneyland Park, even the park down there, some sections where you could actually walk by and kind of enjoy some ambiance without everybody crashing into you and running you over.
get rid of the Autopia.
Yeah, get that out of there. It's hard to press the pedal. It's exhausting. People are crashing into you from the back. Smell alone, people are passing out from that.
So this is what I would do is, and this is what I've said for a very long time. There was even a rumor way back in the day that this area would be renovated out and there was going to be like a mermaid ride there. But, the mermaid, of course, eventually went into California Adventure. And a few other rides have been, mentioned to take that motorboat cruise Autopia area. You remove the Autopia. The Autopia can be repurposed. I have an idea for that. Don't worry, Autopia fans. And then the submarine lagoon. What do you do with that? That's the biggest challenge, because the Autopia and the submarines are both intertwined, because the Autopia sits on the submarine lagoon show building. So you can't just build some gigantic structure on top of that show building, but you can, just have like a small ride on there. So I would say that maybe the submarines time has come, and I think in that area you could fit at least 2 large themed dark rides in that area. Maybe the Beauty and the Beast ride that they're building in Tokyo, which is just incredible. They're building a lot of like Frozen rides. I think could be kind of cool. They build a castle. Elsa does her thing. It would fit in a little bit with the Matterhorn, as long as they don't touch the Matterhorn outside of just build that near it. I think it would give it more theme. Also, moving over the road there a little bit is the Fantasyland Theater. That's gone. That's a ripe for removal, and build something like really cool in that spot. That's my opinion. I would remove the Fantasyland Theater, and I would build, ideally, I would put in some kind of a villain's attraction. But maybe they don't want to go that far. That's another spot for, an Elsa, Beauty and the Beast type attraction for Fantasyland. And that helps kind of bring some of the crowds away from Galaxy's Edge.
Yeah. Yeah, I like it. And that's it's tough with Autopia, man. I just thought of something. So like, I'm backtracking a little bit on my idea of just gutting that one. Now the lagoon, the subs, I'm with you on what you're saying. And originally what I was thinking was, because didn't they temporarily close the Speedway in Disney World when they were doing some construction? I don't know. I think it was for Tron. They closed something. Maybe they closed the
it's back
train.
open, but I believe it is slightly shorter, or they've kind of like moved some of it around, but I do believe it's like slightly shorter than it was before, but it's basically the same.
So, and yeah, I knew that they didn't close it all the way, but do you think during that time when it was closed, like everybody was just, people were running home crying, they walk into the park, they see it's closed, and they head right back to the car?
Nope.
My guess is that it wasn't missed too terribly, but then I also think about this, like when you're a young go-hard, all you want to do is drive. And I think adults, like, dude, we easily forget about this stuff, right? Like, we're just like, oh yeah, driving, dude. The last thing I want to do is get behind the wheel, press on a gas pedal while I'm supposed to be enjoying the sights and sounds of Captain Rex from the cockpit, and that's not an option anymore anyway. But he's a DJ now, I guess. Different endeavors, but the whole thing with the cars is, man, that's a huge highlight for kids. And knowing that, I'm hoping to meet you guys in Disneyland with Dane at the end of the summer or the fall or whenever we decide to do this. He's going to go straight nuts for those. And so I'd hate for that to be one of those things that he knows about, and then all of a sudden it's gone, or like doesn't get to experience. Because, man, I mean, you remember getting in there, you like to drive around, stuff like that. But it's a cool attraction. But man, that thing is dated. The concept is dated.
Was never. I liked it. Never was crazy about it, but I liked it. It was good.
Sure.
You get rid of that. It takes up too much space. You could put it. I know this probably would never happen, but you could put it on the People Mover track or redesigned People Mover track system. So you have these Autopia cars that could like drive down the center of Tomorrowland as if it was a highway in the sky. I think you wouldn't be able to get as many vehicles on there as you could the original Autopia track would be removed. So maybe you build up the vehicles. They have more seats, things like that. Maybe there's 2-3 rows. You can fit more.
But then you don't have an individual driver anymore.
Well,
Each person is not, out there doing their thing. But to be fair, as there's a good chance that as Dane gets to be the age to start driving, he might not even be allowed to drive. Autonomy only, I don't know. So that's another good point. So I see what you're saying. It takes away the individual piloting experience out of there, but we all kind of pretend like we're driving in cars. I'm sitting in the back and I'm pretending like I'm driving that car over in Cars Land Radiator Springs Racers. So maybe that's not necessary.
So I think that if Disney wants to increase the capacity of the park, the Autopia is not an attraction that increases the capacity of the park. And I think that's a huge chunk of land that can be repurposed. Even if they want to save this area, continue it a few more years, I do think eventually this area will be repurposed. The Fantasyland Theater is an ideal location for another attraction in that area for a complete repurpose. There's another place that I found a while back. This is a place that I think would be a really cool thing. This probably could never happen, but you remove the New Orleans train station, and there is room behind there. Some of these buildings would have to be removed, but it's sandwiched in between Pirates of the Caribbean and the Haunted Mansion. There is Imagineering's back there. There's some different there's some different backstage buildings back there, but there's a giant chunk of land for another attraction. I'd love to see some kind of like New Orleans black magic style attraction. I think it would just be really cool. And that's a little bit like Princess and the Frog, the villain. Oh my gosh, that'd be so cool.
Is that what you were thinking? You're thinking something Princess and the Frog related, or just like that theme? So maybe it doesn't line up with the story of that show. It might not have the characters from it, but like that idea, voodoo thing?
Something voodoo related in that area would be just really, really cool. And I believe his name is Dr. Facili, something along those lines from that movie. I forgot. I've only seen it once, but that guy was, I feel like, underused. He was such a cool villain.
He was scary, man. He had a lot of cool like enunciation with face. He was like Jafar, but like more believable, but also more like maybe more sinister. Yeah, because he like pretended to be cool. He was also like that guy he was like a blend of like Jafar and then the guy from Coco. That ended up being a bad dude, but you thought he was, you know what I mean? Doesn't that kind of he's like a hybrid of those two.
Yeah. See, this idea I've had since 2008 is remove that station and then build like, like the shotgun style houses, those New Orleans houses all the way across.
Long skinny ones.
Or maybe like row houses, build them across there. And then maybe like one of them was like different from the rest. That was the voodoo house or something that you went into. I think it would have been so cool.
Like that.
But anyway,
is that a walkthrough? Is that a walkthrough, or is that are you on some kind of ride vehicle?
It was a vehicle. I need to put more time into the actual design of it. But the thing was, it might not happen because I would have put the Frontierland station over by. I would have moved that station over to Big Thunder Mountain, which is impractical now with Galaxy's Edge making that huge U shape in the track. So that's impractical. And then originally I would have removed the Fantasyland station and then used that area for more expansion for rides in Fantasyland. So I would have kind of like moved some of the stations around a little bit, but some of that's not practical in today's time because of Galaxy's Edge. But that area could still be in some way used behind that station for an attraction, because I think it's like a perfect area. There's a ton of room, and New Orleans would just be ripe for an attraction like that. It would be so cool.
Well, what if you put the train station? What if you move that back? And I'm not looking at a map or anything right now, but what if you moved it back, like somewhere in Critter Country? I know that it always looks to me like it's really steep back there by Pooh Corner. I know that that's just kind of a forced perspective kind of thing that they have going on. But what if it was a Critter Country station, and you squeezed at least part of the show building or part of this area in between the Pirates and the Haunted Mansion show building? You operated that ride right there. I mean, I don't know if there's even enough room. Like,
Yeah.
it seems like that's very tight. Like you said, there's already a building there. And like right behind there. But I mean, it'd be cool. I just don't know if it would be able to be a very robust attraction, but maybe, or maybe it can't be a robust ride, but it's kind of a cool attraction. It's hard for me to figure out what that exactly would be, but.
Yeah, there could definitely be, and I would make it like a hanging style, like Peter Pan. I think that's an underutilized ride system.
Okay, they could fit that in. They could fit that in then. Okay, so you're thinking more along that line, not necessarily a Z ticket, as they say.
Yeah, so something like that I think could be a fun little expansion area with a unique attraction. As for it being built in Critter Country, I think the train has to do like a huge buildup of speed to get up over the new trestle that's in Rivers of America. So like I said, Galaxy's Edge just changes everything. But yeah, those are some possible ideas for changes. And then what about Tomorrowland? Star Tours, Buzz Lightyear, Launch Bay, which was the former Carousel / America Sings show building, which is now Galaxy's Edge's kind of like merchandise and wristband check-in area. There's a ton of stuff in Tomorrowland that could be swapped out. What are your thoughts on Tomorrowland? I miss prior to 1998's Tomorrowland. I miss that style.
Yeah, I do too. I do too. I mean, I think obviously the whole era of invention, horrible waste. All the tracks for People Mover. What are they doing with that? Is it more expensive to take it out, put something else on there? I mean, we talked about rocket. You talked about rocket rods in one of your gaming streams recently here. You dogged on it a little bit, but there's a lot of show buildings. There's so much stuff in here that's not being used. You've got like this, not the Star Trader, but you've got the old Starcade that was sitting above. They use it for some event space. People are not getting married up there. They do something with that. I don't even know if Star Tours stays. Didn't we talk about a potential expiration on that? How long is that going to last when you have a land just, right across the way that's just hammering that theme home?
That's
how does that stay?
Great question. And I do believe it'll last another 5 years before it'll be considered for removal. The only reason that I would be sad to see it go would be that it's the only Disney attraction that is set in the old Star Wars universe. So, the Imperial, the Rebels, you got C-3PO hanging out, whereas Galaxy's Edge, it's really based on some of the newer movies and some like unique characters. So it is kind of fun still to see, some of the older
the old homeboys.
Yeah, it would be sad to see some of them go. Admiral Akbar, hanging up in the security area.
Sure enough. Yeah, you're right. Okay. I'm not saying I want to see it thrown away. I'm just saying like these are some ideas because there's a tremendous amount of real estate that's being underutilized over there.
I wanted to see it go until I remembered that. And I'm like, yeah. Kind of would miss that. But it's also kind of strange that there is attraction over here when you have a giant land over there with arguably one of the best rides ever created when it does open eventually, Rise of the Resistance. But I think that this area could have a complete redo. Get rid of the People Mover track. You take the rockets, you put them back in their rightful spot, back on top of the Astro Orbiter's location, put that back in the center of the land. You get rid of the carousel building. Maybe you build Tron there somehow, but the show building there is so small. I don't know if it could hold that large of an attraction.
Are you talking about the same Tron attraction that's going to go into Florida here right now?
Yeah.
Ooh, that'd be so cool if that were back there. But like you just said, I mean, I don't know. Is the space available?
Logistics is a tough one for that because that area. But then could you think of Tron in a different way? Could you design it to be more of an outdoor attraction that went throughout the land? I think that would be really, really cool. There's a lot of room in there. Like maybe it's time for Buzz Lightyear to
I
move
mean,
on.
it's such a goofy ride. That one I could have no problem with it never coming back.
I don't. I like going on this attraction, but it's a bit outdated when you compare it to Midway Mania across the way. And I think
Sure.
it's good real estate for another unique attraction that is not Toy Story, whereas Toy Story is already represented through Midway Mania.
Hmm.
And this could be like a prime location for maybe like a Wall-E themed attraction or something that is more futuristic. Now,
I'd
if
like to see that. I'd like to see Wally come in here. You know, the Tomorrowland of, and maybe this concept is not something that really works and it wouldn't pull the crowds, but it'd be nice to see something that has just even the tiniest educational component. You know, I know that's what Epcot was all about.
oh,
I know.
I got
This is
something for you.
way out of the box, but you know, that would be a nice use of that space, that old Circle Vision Theater. You put some kind of Wally situation in there. It could be a dark ride. It could be, you know, however you want to set it up. But and I talked about that Wally attraction in like the first or second, third episode that we did. There's a lot more involvement in that. There's no budget for that, but I mean, just something else in here because yeah, I would just like to see something that's teaching somebody something. You know,
All
it's
right.
not sponsored by, you know, the evil corporations like Monsanto. It's not about that. It's just talking about, hey, you know, pick up the trash and you know, and don't drink, you know, so much the pops, you know, the soda pops, the Cokes, Sprites, 7-Ups.
Magic Eye Theater.
Sure.
We redoing it here.
Okay.
That is now. Oh my god! I had this great idea a long time ago. It was like 2016. It was after I watched Neil deGrasse Tyson's Cosmos series.
Okay.
You get the man in here. You redo the theater so that it has the screens in the front, and then on the sides and above you, those are also screens. So you're in this spaceship of your imagination. I think that's what they called it. And that is literally what the theater turns into. You have the walls on both sides, right? Can turn into screens. So maybe this particular show, maybe there's 10 different shows. One of them is going to see the photosynthesis of plants or something. You travel through there and you got Neil and his voice, you know, everybody loves, and he's going on
Sure.
about it, getting everybody jazzed. The kids are getting crazy. And you're cruising through this plant, and you can see it above you into the sides, or maybe you go off into the cosmos and you're flying by planets and Jupiter's rings, and oh, it would just be so cool. Like if the shows were unique, if there was like maybe just like five different shows, so there was always something different when you went onto it, but then the whole theater opens up as if you're like completely surrounded by it. That's possible, like screens all the way across both ends of it above
What's the
you.
what are you sitting in? How are people arranged? Like how do you see that? How do you picture that?
I think sitting in chairs, so you'd be sitting like in like a normal theater, but that's kind of how it would start out, and then you realize like it's way more where the theater like comes to life. I don't know. Maybe we can even get an animatronic Tyson in there to add a little more to it.
Oh, that'd be great. That'd be great. Yeah, because he'd be on the screen, he'd introduce something, but you know, he goes off there and people start taking a nap. You know, that would be really, I like that. I like that. So I mean, I didn't watch a ton of the show, but yeah, you're sitting there and is it kind of moving around you, or does maybe your chair moves? You know, maybe it follows some kind of path on there. Not, it doesn't
Yeah.
get anybody dizzy, you know. There's some warnings with the signs, they have those at the beginning of the ride, but like just shows you going through, you know, different parts of the, you know, the Virgo supercluster and all that kind of stuff. That would be real, I think. And hey, who did the composition for that? Music composition, nobody other than Alan Silvestri. So you get his music in there, you're pumping it out. You got an animatronic of deGrasse. Maybe it's remember when he used to wear those tank tops, the beef castle. You know, that guy was buff. So you got him in there doing that, and that brings in a different crowd now, and that would be a really nice. That'd be a great attraction.
Yeah, and it would be educational,
Yeah.
entertaining. So I think that would be a really fun attraction for that area. They could throw it in Epcot, and get the synergy going. They love that.
Yeah, forget about Wally. You know, I like
Oh
that.
no,
That's a good one.
Wally's.
I'm not throwing him out. I'm joking. But that idea that you just had right there, I mean, how hard would it be to get a little, you know, little joint project, like you said, a little synergy going on that, and put something together?
Yeah, I
Has there
think
ever been talks of that, or is this just like right out of the Scar Gate? Like
right
this is
out of
just you're coming up
Scargate,
with this.
right out of
All
it.
right. Okay. All right. I
But it
like
would
it.
be fun. I think it would be cool. Yeah, I think that would be a neat thing. And also, if they could do something, Tron, maybe it's not a full-on roller coaster like Shanghai Magic Kingdom, but like maybe that kind of a style that kind of like just cruises through Tomorrowland above. Like maybe you have the overhangs that they have in Shanghai that light up as the car moves through. You have that above the track, and it's more of like rocket rods but built on, you know, roller coaster tracks, so it's sustainable and not going to break and wear out and all that stuff that rocket rods had happen to it. I think that would be like super, super cool if this attraction's just soaring through Tomorrowland, uniquely lit up with LEDs. You know, it's popular. Everyone loves an LED.
Hmm. You know what would be cool, and I don't want to dial back here right away after you just brought up this other cool idea here, but Cosmos did have, and I think they announced this, you know, maybe they announced it like a year ago, but you know, they're doing this other one, Possible Worlds. That's not out yet, is it?
No, it's not.
So it could be, you know, they get this all set up, and it's like, you know, they start promoting. They either promote the ride with the show, or they promote the show with the ride, something like that. You know, that could be cool.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Yeah.
So those are areas that we can maybe see some new attractions added here or there. A lot of these are very unique attractions that we would really like. You know, Disney these days are very focused on IP. So I think these are interesting ideas, but I'm also curious to see what the viewers want to see in terms of these attractions. But another unique thing about Star Wars Land and how this will affect the rest of the park is dining. So Oga's Cantina, the very atmospheric heavy scene that goes on in there, and also the lightsaber building, the droid building. So these are like merchandise opportunities, but they're heavily themed. And could we see something of that kind in New Orleans or Tomorrowland or Toontown, where there's some other kind of like merchandise item that you could have like a whole show built around, that you purchase it, you go through this whole show, the whole thing. Where else could we see that happen in the park, do you think? Or even if it will happen?
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I could see. I feel like I could see that in Frontierland. You know, maybe we've all but passed like the days where people are even remotely interested in the Old West. But with Thunder Mountain there, with the store, you know, all those little storefronts that are kind of along like the Rancho, you know, the Rancho restaurants over there, that little central plaza where they get all wild around Day of the Dead. You know, I could see that being something that's fairly immersive. You talked about, you know, New Orleans with the voodoo thing. If they were to add another thing to kind of tie in over there, I think that potentially that could make it pretty neat. But dude, my favorite land in the whole park, Adventureland. I think you could get pretty wild with that. But you might have to make some changes to something. You know, I mean, the area has, you know, it's got two rides. It's got two rides.
Mm-hmm.
So either something else gets added in there, something gets updated. And personally, between the two things, Indiana Jones and Jungle Cruise, I don't think there's really much I'd like to see them do differently with those.
No.
But I mean, you could get more immersive with walk around characters. You could, you know, some of those restaurants could all of a sudden get a little bit wild. Like for instance, the Bengal barbecue. You know, like I don't know, you know, the sign is so cool, but the food and everything else is really underwhelming, you know, as compared to the um, you know, the artistry behind putting the facade and stuff up for this restaurant. So I think there's a lot that could be done over there, you know. But yeah, I don't know. It's tough because what I've seen with Galaxy's Edge, I've never seen anywhere else before. And so right now it's really hard to picture the rest of these lands even you know, remotely measuring up to that, especially because Star Wars is so hyped right now. So how are you going to all of a sudden get a whole bunch of people to care about, you know, Davy Crockett again?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know. I guess they would almost have to. That's the thing about the IP. You brought it up, but like, yeah, it's like you would almost have to. A movie needs to drop or something needs to come out that gets somebody excited about either a particular era or a character or you know, a setting, some kind of region or whatever. Something needs to happen. An era, a setting, or a character that everybody gets behind, and then you somehow implant that, or you know, yeah, you implement that into one of these regions, and then you build that theme around it. This is just completely off the top of my head, but I think that's the way that you get people interested.
Mm. Yeah, it's tough because you hear them talk a lot about IP now.
It
And
doesn't have to be Marvel. It doesn't have to be something like that. They can create it. I'm just saying there needs to be something there needs to be something, I feel like, outside of the theme park that is about Adventureland, or
Mm-hmm.
and I know there's that Jungle Cruise thing with The Rock, but there needs to be something outside of the park, whether it's a movie or a TV show or some miniseries, something documentary, something like that, that gets somebody really, really wild about it. And then they start teasing about the concept, and then it won't be Iger, but somebody gets on there and they address either the shareholders or they address that D23, and they say they come out sneaky, and funny and a little coy smile or whatever, and then they start alluding to it, and then it turns into this big thing. But it's got to start somewhere. It doesn't have to be existing IP. It doesn't have to be bought IP, something that they got from Fox. But it has to. It has to. I don't know. It has to touch people somewhere else besides just the park. That's how you're going to get people in there, in my opinion.
Yeah, and another thing too is some merchandise. But what about like themed dining? So more like Oga's Cantina just sets a new bar, or Ronto's Roasters, or any of those new restaurants are so heavily themed in Galaxy's Edge. Could we see something like that appear in Tomorrowland or Fantasyland? I've had two ideas for highly themed eateries similar to the things in Galaxy's Edge. One of them has been something I've wanted to do for a very long time, was a Seven Dwarfs themed restaurant. So you enter through kind of like a courtyard entrance, kind of like you're exiting the castle. So say you replaced Red Rose Tavern, which was former the Village House, and you make that like kind of like a castle wall area. You're kind of like exiting and you go into a forest, and that's the restaurant. Inside you have kind of the main areas, kind of the forest, and then an off area. Maybe there's some seating for a mine. So maybe there's some places to eat there. And then maybe the kitchens are maybe inside of the dwarfs' houses. So I think like that could be an opportunity to change a restaurant that is relatively plain. It's got a decent theming, but you could take it way up a notch and make it like a really immersive themed restaurant. This would probably be more of a table service. So you sit down, the waiter comes, does its thing, instead of more a counter service as it is today. But that's an opportunity to make another highly themed restaurant in the park. Another place could be the former Star Trader. You can make it into kind of a space station-ish thing that's very similar to what they're maybe doing in Epcot with the space station restaurant. So like they could take that technology and stuff like that and bring it to Tomorrowland, where you are dining in a space station above the earth and you use giant windows looking down on it like they're doing there. I think that could be a really cool thing. Just take the idea that they have at Epcot and implant it into Disneyland here. I think could be really fantastic. Now, the reason I bring that up is that the Alien Pizza Planet, I don't think is destined for this world for very long. And that would be...
no, it's dried up.
That's where I would put it. Now, that used to be Red Rocket's Pizza. It was rethemed to Alien Pizza Planet, I think, to try to infuse a little more energy into it. But unfortunately, people don't seem to really enjoy the food there super much. So I think
it's all bread. It's like there's a little bit of cheese on it, a tiny amount of sauce. It's all bread. It's a bread pizza. How in the world are you putting Snow White over there?
No, that's Tomorrowland. That's where the space restaurant would go. They're building in Epcot.
The space restaurant. Okay.
Yeah, so those are like two areas where you could put these highly immersive themed restaurants into the park. And you have Tomorrowland Terrace, which is still, a reasonable restaurant. You can go up there, walk up, get your stuff. But it seems repetitive to have two walk-up restaurants in the same land. So one of them becomes a slightly more immersive themed restaurant, if that's what you choose. Or if you want something way more casual and quick and cheaper, you have Tomorrowland Terrace ready to roll.
Okay, I like it. And so you're talking, so to kind of go back to the Village House, you're saying that, you kind of talked like a little bit about it. The dwarves are around and their houses are involved. What about my old lady? What about the witch? Where is she going to be in there?
Oh, I don't know. Where would you put her?
I definitely would put her up in one of those little towers, because there's a lot of those little windows, as you're walking up, there's a whole bunch of those. So first of all, that's already played out over there on, in front, over there, over by, Snow White's, the Scary Adventures or Daring Journey, whatever it is over there. But she's the queen over there. Now you come over here, and maybe she is the hag version. And maybe you don't see much. You don't see much. You see she's got the hood, just like all cloaked out, but you just kind of see the curve of that lumpy old nose. maybe the chin sticking out, maybe you just, something. So it's there, it's obvious. It's not too hard, for somebody to spot him, but she's not like looking head on. It's like something's up there. It's
Mm-hmm.
maybe you see part of Snow White, and then you see. So there's a couple of those towers. There's one that has like a clock on it, and that's more to the far right. But to the left of the main entrance, I think they have, a few of those windows. So it could be kind of like a progression by window. You kind of see like Snow White's over here, and then you know that there's an interaction. They're looking, they're talking to each other. Somehow they wound up there, and then there could be a slight continuation of that once you get inside, or something like that, or maybe not. Maybe you don't have to tell the whole story. You should tease them here a little bit right here, and then who knows what happened. Maybe you just see Snow White's feet sticking out. She's out cold from the apple. I don't know. You don't want to be, too scary about it. But yeah, I think, put some more stuff in there. I think that would be cool. It'd be like a smaller, so not quite as involved as that Beauty and the Beast restaurant
Mm-hmm.
in the Disney World, but it could be elements, or it could be maybe, we'll say maybe it can be 65% of that. It'd be a
Yeah.
part.
I would say it would be a little smaller version of that, but it's also that really cool environment that you're in. It's a little more than just a standard restaurant. And there isn't another walk-up restaurant in Fantasyland, but I think that makes up for it now that Galaxy's Edge has its own walk-up restaurants, and there is two of them. So there's Docking Bay and Food and Ronto's Roaster. So it kind of makes up for the now lack of a walk-up restaurant in Fantasyland. Those are just, hop, skip, and a jump over the railroad track. And I think that would be good for that place. So those are just two ideas to try to bring some of that cool, really immersive stuff into Disneyland from Galaxy's Edge. So this is something that I should have brought up before, but I didn't. Forgot. Sure. It's crowds. And one of the ways to fix the crowd issues, this was a temporary fix that Disney implemented a backstage like bypass behind Main Street on the right side, and that is the Tomorrowland side of Main Street. So if you enter this backstage bypass, it lets you out just by the little red wagon by the Plaza Inn. So that's a way of kind of avoiding the central Main Street when there's a parade or there's fireworks, stuff along those lines. This area is incredibly under-themed. And there was a rumor when this was created, I believe it was on Mice Chat way back in the day when they used to do a lot of the rumoring. And the team that was responsible for Buena Vista Street, so Buena Vista Street, just absolutely incredible themed environment. They were tasked with designing a whole new Main Street for back there. So like a whole area that's designed like kind of the backside of Main Street, back alleys, things along those lines. And you'd walk through there, the shops, instead of just having these blank side buildings, they would be like the backside of shops and things along those lines. I'd love to see them develop that into an actual like unique area that's always open, so you can always use that entrance. And then there would be where the crossroads of Main Street is, there would be a way to go into Tomorrowland from there, so you don't have to go all the way to the hub. So that's just another way of kind of connecting. Now, of course, there is the restaurant that's on the other side of that cross street, and that of course is the Carnation Cafe. We can't really remove that and make a bypass into Adventureland just because that restaurant can't change, in my opinion. But I think having that extra entrance maybe into Tomorrowland could really alleviate some of the crowds that are kind of stuck in around the Astro Orbiter, because that's such a tight entrance into Tomorrowland. But have like that secondary entrance could really alleviate the crowds in that area, and also make like a really fun immersive area for Main Street. I always thought it'd be cool if instead of the shop facades, you have more of the residential area. So that's what, in my mind, when I heard that rumor, I was like, oh, it'd be cool if they turn that area more into residential Main Street style buildings, because Main Street's more of shops and municipal buildings, but there's no residential buildings. So in the backside there, you have residential buildings, and they're unique and have, more windows for honorary, Disney folk.
I hear you. So you don't want to mess around at all with the Carnation Cafe.
Yeah.
But what about like refreshment corner? So right before you get to the Jolly Holiday Bakery. Now there isn't currently a pass through, but there's got to be a walkway. There is some kind of access thing for cast members. So if you cut through that, pretty soon there's buildings there. So I don't know how they would do this necessarily. And then all of a sudden you're if you trace that line, it follows through like the tropical hideaway. You're basically on that outside edge of the exit, or the the return to civilization from the jungle cruise. So you're coming through there. So that could be, that could be a way, because if you look at that's more plausible than Carnation. Because Carnation, there's nowhere to go if you were to cut through from there. I mean, you're in the middle of the jungle. But the other one,
it's true.
there's no way. Nobody can tell me that there's no way there aren't people that are passing directly from one of those backstage doors behind Refreshment Corner all the way through into right by Tropical Imports. That dips out. It's got to dip out. You got to be able to get through there somehow. Now that is a lot less. I feel like that's way more unlikely than what you were talking about with cutting through some of those backstage roads in Tomorrowland. Those are big roads. Those are wide roads. A fire truck could go down there. So whatever they decided to do there, I mean, yeah, I could see that. I could see something happening there.
Yeah, that area right there, I think would be just because if you look at an aerial map of this area, you can see the walkway, and it's very unattractive, and it's disappointing that they didn't kind of go the extra mile, maybe similar to Disneyland Paris, where they did add a walkway behind Main Street to avoid that area when it was raining or when it was overcrowded with parades and firework viewing. And it's like this beautiful area back there. And then Disneyland just has this kind of, I mean, it's good that they have it, but it's just disappointing that they don't have a more detailed area that was more show focused. Like you could put more shops back there, or another restaurant. Maybe you could move Carnation Cafe and Refreshment Corner back there to have more space for the restaurant, and then free up those two areas so they're more like thematic. So maybe you put some old Main Street vehicles back in those streets like it was, when Disneyland opened. I think there's just so much that they could do back there. And if you look at aerial maps once again of the backstage behind Space Mountain and Main Street, there is a lot of room. There's actually a lot of dead space in the center there that could be reallocated. And Disney's really heavily focused right now on moving backstage things to off-property locations so they can use more of this area.
Well, what about too, like think about it like with the restaurants and things like this, like the Minnie and Friends breakfast in the park opportunity. I think, does that only, so as far as Disneyland is concerned, does that only take place at the Plaza Inn? Is that the only character dining experience within the park?
It's the only one. Yeah.
Either get rid of it. Just saying. Either get, they can't. So maybe that goes somewhere else. Maybe now that experience, and I feel like they kind of have to keep it on Main Street. They have to keep it sort of by the front, but maybe they can move that over to Jolly Holiday. It becomes a little less of an affair, depending on how popular it is. I guess I don't know. You need to see the numbers, see some of the financials, but that's a big chunk right there that people still have to go around to get into Tomorrowland. Like, what if that goes away? I mean, that thing, if I'm thinking like to scale, and I know that there's different levels sometimes with some of the attractions, like that's 2/3 of the area that Star Tours takes up, maybe a little less than that, maybe a little less than that, maybe a third.
That is a huge chunk of land.
It's a massive building, and it's not even so much the building, but like you just said, the thoroughfare, like it. You could save a lot of space. This is where you could put that more immersive ride in there. That you're talking about with deGrasse, he's over there, and then maybe Wally's over here. I don't know.
You have to take into account that also is a cast member cafeteria.
They'll figure something out. They'll bring their lunch from home, or
it was that there's a lot of Walt history in that restaurant. The Plaza Inn has a lot of like silly Walt quotes where he was like, "Hey, let's get crazy with these decorations."
I can't help, I'm bringing the things up, if I walked in there and I would get the chills, from Walt or whatever, and I wouldn't do anything.
The chills.
It's just something to think about.
But like this was supposed to be International Street and Edison Avenue, all those different ideas they had back in the day for that area back there. And there really isn't a lot of backstage shenanigans happening there, where I think that could be just huge for new attractions. You could even do that walkway back where the little red wagon is and the first aid, like that could eventually like went right into Tomorrowland in that location. So you have another bypass from that tight corridor by Astro Orbiter. So in that section over there, one of the main buildings that would probably have to be relocated or changed would be First Aid and the Make-A-Wish building. They're all kind of like built into the same structure right there. Those can
Yeah, aren't
easily
they
be
all in
relocated.
that? What is that store over there? It's like the photo shop and stuff like. It's the building next to that, though. Or I mean, it's all one building, but it's the entrance next to that where Make-A-Wish and like the baby care center and all that stuff is next to that.
Yeah, it's all in that one
Okay.
building over there.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah, I don't know. A lot of options, and the other route, which I know that they use for parades, but the one that's at that, what do you call that first thing? So if the hub is up in the front, where, just short of the castle, what's that first thing when you walk in? It's kind of diamond shaped, it's got the little thing in the middle of the statue. And, there used to be some cannons over there, and there's like, that nice little marching band situation there. What is that thing?
I thought it was called Central Plaza, but I'm not 100% sure.
Okay,
Somebody will
so
have
if
to
you're
correct
so
us on that.
yeah, please. So if you're standing in the middle of that thing and then you shoot off to the right where those doors are, a lot of times the characters that take the pictures in that other little alcove kind of by the where Disney, they got that store with all those awesome things for sale in there. You're over there, but you go through those doors. There's those big giant barn-looking doors over there. If you went through there, if they ended up having a pass through at that spot, you'd have a long walk until you got to anything that you know, it'd be tough to even get into Tomorrowland from there
Hmm.
because you'd basically, I
Yeah.
mean, they'd have to do a lot. There's a lot
Yeah.
involved there. But
But up
maybe
a
down
little
the
bit
road,
further up where the center street is,
yep,
that's
yep,
where it could work as a bypass through there and clean up that area definitely. So,
sure.
what any other closing thoughts on what could be added to Disneyland in the future? What you think is coming to Disneyland in the future now that Star Wars Land is done after all those years of watching it be constructed?
I don't know. I guess like they're so, the IP thing was has boomed, is booming. Maybe it's on its way out a little bit. I've always kind of hoped for a resurgence of original content.
Mm-hmm.
The original room. Roga and Diaz, like just something that's like original in there that like I said, but I did make the point too that something has to happen outside the park and come in. But that's the whole thing. It doesn't have to be a bot property or it doesn't have to be something with Pixar. But I'd like to see a resurgence of something somewhat original. I get that most stories are retold, and even all the stuff in Fantasyland. Many of those properties did not originally belong to Disney. They were other people, but obviously he's the best person for the job. But they he made it his own. And you can do that with just about anything. So I would like to see some original stuff in here. The only point that I make again is like that we are so tight for space, but we've also got a lot of wasted, we've got there's a lot of fat to trim in that park, especially in Tomorrowland. So my thought is I really like the immersive thing. I think they're going to see how this goes with Galaxy's Edge. It's so specific too. Are people going to get tired of that? I don't know. Where the other stuff, you can kind of make up your own story about some of it. And I think we're getting to a point where there's less and less of that. Tony Baxter would agree with me. I know he would. That we're getting to a point where there's less and less like personal involvement in creating the story in your head. You don't even get a choice. It's all drawn out there for you. Then you can go online and read all the fan fiction. Somebody else has got it figured out for you, even if they didn't. So it's just, I don't know. There's not a lot of room for interpretation with a lot of the experiences in the parks right now, especially when it's IP, because it's based on a movie. There's already a story that exists. And there's a part 2 and a part 3 and then some kind of thing where they all meet each other and have a big battle on an island. Like there's so much of that whole thing exists, and that's my problem with IP. I don't have any other problem outside of that. I feel like IP is just, it tells the complete story. There's no room for interpretation. There's no room for fun with it sometimes. And so yeah, that's the only thing I'm worried about with Galaxy's Edge. Is that. And so if they took that concept and moved it over into Frontierland, let's say they did it for, well, I'll use a different park just real quick as an example. So Paris, the haunted house over there, David O'Neill, some other guys have talked about this. People get so crazy about that haunted mansion story. And I do too, it's fun. The lure is fun, but people get so crazy about it. And they make up all this stuff. And then, the Imagineers come in or the story writers and stuff, and they're like, dude, that's not what I meant. I just, whatever you want to do with it is fine, but that wasn't like intended. We didn't plan for that.
Yeah.
That's not what we're hoping. So I'd like to see like more opportunity for people to just come up with whatever the heck they want. I'd like to see some new stuff in here. The only thing I'm worried about again with that immersive thing is that it really like silos these experiences, but at the same time, I think that's pretty dope. and I can't really say for sure until we get to Galaxy's Edge and find out. They have good cheese. I don't drink the green one, drink the blue one. Apparently it's way better. I guess that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, it's that's a good port to end on. I like that. So that's a good point. Also, just one last tidbit. An Imagineer once said that it's far easier to come up with our own ideas than try to remake another idea that is an intellectual property. I thought that was a really interesting comment.
You've drawn some cool characters over the years. I've seen these pictures you draw. How hard is it to draw Daffy Duck? You try to draw Daffy Duck and he's going to look like a bozo. But if you draw your own character, there's a whole thing, and it's like there's way more life and there's way more like personality or mood or whatever you want to call it to it. I'm not an artist, but but you think about that, like you draw your picture and then you try to copy somebody else's, that tracing or that copy of the other one, I mean, it just looks like a bizarro version. So that's why, I totally dig what you're talking about. It makes perfect sense.
Yep. And there we go. So that is life after Star Wars Land. Now that it is open, it's operating. I'm still calling it Star Wars Land, even though it has a proper name. Maybe I'll figure it out eventually. But yeah, any other closing comments before we send it off to another podcast, which is cool. We're on episode 10. We appreciate you guys watching. Hopefully we can get these more regular and some other types of style videos on the channel too.
That's kind of our classic line every time is we're gonna get them going. Hopefully we do. I'm excited. What do you, just a quick teaser, what do you think we're gonna talk about next time?
Well, there's a new attraction coming to Toontown. I didn't want to talk about in this podcast because we have way more to talk about it. So that's a teaser. That's an official thing. There is a new ride coming to Toontown.
Is that Goofy's Revenge? It's like you're an earthworm. It's like a worm version of Goofy. It's like a dream sequence. You're digging around, and then there's that big mouse, the mozzarella guy or whatever, isn't it? Like the guy from Rescue Rangers. No.
Well, you spoiled
Goofy's
our next
Revenge.
podcast.
Anyway, so in closing, you heard Scar. Scar, you talked about the 7 dwarfs. Folks at home, in the comments, which one of the 7 dwarfs does Scar most like, and why? Please.
All right, that's what we want to see in the comments. Which dwarf am I like? I guess.
Don't hold back. Let's hear. We want to hear why. You definitely want to hear why. Okay, that's it for me. I'm excited for the next episode. Thanks everybody for sticking with it. If you have any questions, definitely let us know.
And we'll see you later.